It's true that some things change as we get older. But if you're a woman over 40 and you're dealing with insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, and weight gain, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. And with MIDI Health, you can get help and stop pushing through it alone. The experts at MIDI understand that all these symptoms can be connected to the hormonal changes that happen around menopause, and MIDI can help you feel more like yourself again. Many healthcare providers aren't trained to treat or even recognize menopause symptoms. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts. They're dedicated to providing safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions for dozens of hormonal symptoms, not just hot flashes. Most importantly, they're covered by insurance. 91% of MIDI patients get relief from symptoms within just 2 months. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne, and it's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game, personally and professionally. And today we have just such a beautiful human on her birthday as we record this. Let me share and let's bring some energy to Estelle's way for her birthday. A little bit about Estelle. She is widely recognized as the Heart Whisperer, is a healer, holistic therapist, author, and metaphysical teacher with over 20 years of experience. Her work centers on helping individuals reconnect with their true essence, heal emotional wounds, and embrace joy and purpose. Her upcoming book, actually her book will be out by the time this releases, so make sure to grab a copy. I think it would have released just days ago, so jump in there. Her upcoming book, Manifest Your True Essence, encapsulates her teachings and insights into heart-led living. And having the pleasure of having an early copy of this beautiful book, you're going to love it. Especially, I know the listeners of this show, she speaks our language is what I'll say. So Estelle, welcome to the show. I can't wait to have this conversation. It's a real pleasure to see you and chat with you again.
Oh, Mark, thank you so much. And I love the birthday shout out. I always love a birthday shout out. And again, what a beautiful introduction. I'm really loving being here and seeing you again, because you are on my podcast and we just have a good time, right? We just vibe.
I was going to say there's just a good vibe, and we were talking a little bit about this before we hit record, but there's just so much going on in the world right now, and there's I think I would describe there's a lot of heaviness and I think uncertainty in people's minds and so forth, that anytime you can attach yourself to some feel good energy and find your tribe. I mean, I'm a hell yes to all of that. So uh so right back at you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I feel super grateful that you're on the show here to share, of course, all of your, the wisdom that you have and experience in your work, and of course topics from the book. So thank you for that. And before, just, that's a bit of a tease, but before we get into all of that, same question that everyone gets, and that's when I strip away all the bios and what you're working on.
Mm.
Who are you?
This is a good question, Mark. And I feel like as we were talking about the onslaught of energy that as a species, humanity, what does it mean to be human, and what we're up against, and
Mm,
out there currently, globally, on so many levels. This question, who am I and who are we, is probably never more potent and powerful and important than it is now. Um, and I would say, I am human to my core. I am human in every last cell of my body. And this being human, this incarnation, being in this body, is for me, this lifetime is all about really experiencing that. And ultimately we experience our humanness through our connection. So when you talked about find your tribe, yes, find your tribe. Like, even if and also know that you're not alone, and that you have a tribe. So you're listening, now. And we, in this day and age, making the most of what I call interdimensional space, making the most of the fact that we can sit on a computer. It's actually it can be very disconnecting, but also it can be very connecting. And so
Yeah.
in the depths of who I am, yeah, I'm all about that humanity and that being, we are meant to be in relationship, we are meant to be in connection. And I'd say that's who I am in my core, and what my life's mission is all about is helping other people feel that too.
Mm, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'd love to know how you got to this place. 'Cause of course, a question like who are you or who am I evolves over time. And I know, obviously, just in preparing for this interview, that even though I'm looking at a quote here from Goop, where they said there's only one word for Estelle's practice: transformative, or maybe to utterly transformative. I mean, that's the work today, but, you didn't start there. You started, from my understanding, you're a reporter with the BBC and other, outlets and so forth. So how did you find yourself to where you're at now in this work specifically? And, of course, now you're releasing, or you just released a book on all of this. I mean, there's gotta be an interesting journey there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, like, you know, these threads of who we are, they emerge, don't they, as we in our childhoods, and we we arrive here, and we have it all inside us. I mean, I really believe that, we kind of our souls arrive on this in this dimension, but we arrive with, with that sort of amnesia, and we're meant to arrive with that amnesia. And our childhoods are kind of build these, these stories that we have to break free from a bit later on. And, that's kind of like
Yeah.
grist to the mill, really. Um, and for me, it's sort of a combination of things, a medley of things in my early years. So actually, one of the things, learning how to meditate, I learned transcendental meditation when I was 7 years old, which I would say, and I did meditate. So I'm sort of a lifetime meditator. And
I'd say.
I would say, yeah. But what I would say with that is actually just the very basic thing of it's such a meditation is such a wonderful tool. And having been a lifetime meditator, I would say, and I do write about this in the book, we can really over kind of complicate meditation, but all of us are born meditators, right? Meditation is just about bringing you into the present. And we spent 9 months in the womb. And in that womb time, we were just growing and just being and just, we were just in present, moment to moment. So remember, like, this is in your DNA, like, you've got this. Even with the
Mm,
thoughts come and bang around and the chit chat of all of that stuff. But the reason why I talk about meditation is because it actually, I feel like, gave me an incredible overview, which it's the thing that it does, right? I didn't realize it was doing it at the time. But when I had all of the stuff that, was handed down to me, from all sorts of different layers of trauma and, generational trauma, and that our stories and our, our journey, I sort of had this overview with the meditation, with the sort of meditative state that kind of really helped me, um, stay level. Although obviously I went, I've had a
yeah,
few dark nights of the soul. There's no two ways about that. And I
sure.
so there's such gifts. Um, but I suppose what I'm saying is that I had this life happening alongside, my inner life, and then this outer, the sort of the exoteric versus the esoteric world. On the outside, I could focus and not let a lot of those stories sort of take me off piece, take me away from, um, really this desire to connect. And
Mhm.
and that's what I sort of manifested with my, um, journalism and my TV presenting. I did travel shows, all sorts of travel shows for Discovery Channel and PBS, and I got to go around the world, so manifested really a way of being with so many people from so many cultures, and it was such a gift. Um, and so it was kind of like a prelude, if that makes sense. Like, all of these pieces happening, like my healing journey on the inside, and I'm doing all my own shadow work, and kind of, but with, being able to do that quite early on with that sort of meditative mind, which is the kind of saves, it helps, really helps. I'm just interjecting that here so people understand it's such a big, it's such a big tool. It's such a big help, really.
Yeah.
When we talk about mental, like how you stay on it and in it, like, and I'm saying you can meditate by gardening, you can meditate by walking the dog, you can meditate by looking at the leaves on the tree, you can meditate by cooking or singing or pray. Like it's all the same.
Yeah.
It
It's a way of being.
it's just a way of being, yeah. But it's sort of helped move, so some of those limiting belief systems that I could have really inherited growing up, I kind of could push through. And that's why I
Mm,
manifest my career really is in media. But um this real purpose of mine, which is to bring people back into their hearts and for them to meet themselves and for them to really just understand and create space for being human and what it means to just embody your purpose and give yourself get out of the way of yourself and give yourself enough breathing space to do that. That was always calling me. That was always calling me back. It was just
yeah.
like I say, you can run, but you can't hide. And so
Yeah.
I went off and did the TV stuff, and then it was like, the universe said, "It's time, my friend. You
Sure.
you got."
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because I was as you're describing the journey, often the narrative is something to the effect of, we're in some sort of position or doing a job or whatever it is, and there's a disconnection or misalignment of some sort. We hit this point, and then everything changes. But I kind of got the impression that maybe there was some of that, but I more so was getting the kind of the vibe that that was just part of your journey, and I think you obviously had that sense that you were meant to be doing something a little bit different down the road, but it was all like I think you said it was kind of like the prelude to what you're doing now. Did you feel that, or did you feel misaligned as you were in those roles?
Actually, I mean, that's a really good point, Mark. I felt incredibly aligned at the time. So funnily
Mm,
enough, I was really aligned when I went into a sort of real kind of I cleared my headspace and I was working at the BBC and then I was walking, I'd walk to work every day and I really put it into my mind, I want to be a TV host, I want to be on screen and this is what I'm manifesting, right, or creating or co-creating. And that was in that moment really aligned. And so and I did call that in and I brought that to me. And I talk about that in the book and I talk about it's really this idea of the seamlessness of that. How possible is that really? We can get so caught up in the minutiae of these constructs and and the blocks and we're not allowed to, or we that's not going to work, or how could that possibly work? All of these things that love to just, a merry-go-round of stuff in the noise in the brain. And I was actually quite forensic, and I've always been quite forensic. And that's why I really mentioned the meditation piece as a child, because that meditation piece has always given me that ability to sort of step out of that chatter, step out of those
yeah.
stories, step out of any of the sort of, trauma that I've picked up in my childhood and really get the clarity of mind
Mm,
to be in alignment at
love
any
it.
one moment, any given time, to check in with myself and really feel into it too.
Okay. There's another It seems like a pretty big moment in your life, at least what you share in the book when you were 22. And I'll just read the quote. You said, "When I had my first very clear out of body experience at 22, in the middle of the day, lying on a sofa in Chelsea, London, among other things, I saw an incredible light web matrix surrounding the planet and felt the presence of Christ. I was also told in no uncertain terms that there was no space and no time. 30 years later, quantum mechanics backs that message up." It's so powerful. It is exciting to see on the science side of things, backing up basically thousands of years of knowledge that's been passed down and so forth. But the other big thing that I mentioned to you before we hit record that I'm starting my second book and a lot of the research that I'm doing, there seems to be a theme of these ancient teachers and wisdom keepers, as I would call them, from all kinds of lineages that at one point have some sort of out of body or some sort of experience like this.
Yeah.
And it the theme seems to be it's like, now I know how life works. in a way. So it seems like you had a similar experience like that. Can you just describe kind of how that came to be, and
Yeah.
I guess what you did with that from that point?
Well, like I said, I mean, I really believe, we are souls, and that we drop into this incarnation, and I call it sort of our higher selves and our sort of earth selves. And we drop into the incarnation and we forget whether you want to believe in past lives, you don't have to believe in past lives, but you can imagine just that a soul has its own sort of DNA, like it has its own sort of cosmic blueprint. So it comes
Yeah.
in, we kind of come in with our own cosmic blueprint. We drop into the lifetime. We have that sort of amnesia. We forget who we are. We're born around these other souls, our mothers, fathers, and, siblings and, teachers and all of that story. But the story is to sort of return to this kind of soul wisdom that's like deep inside us, like it's deep inside us. And
Yeah.
because of the way that life started for me, I had a sort of a knowing or just an understanding of something more. It was always for me that, the trees and nature speaks and is alive, and the interconnectedness of things, and, animals, and, my I would say, and probably a lot of people listening to this are sort of just natural born empaths and have, would be recognized as sensitives now. And remember that empathic energy is, it is a superpower. What we have to learn is how to protect that energy and how to only absorb what we want to absorb. But coming back to this idea of this out of body experience, by the time I was in my early 20s, I have had a sort of an understanding, or a kind of things being more than what we see, that's just more than this 3D reality, that there's magic, like, I really feel that.
Yeah.
Um, but the outer body experience was very powerful in the sense that it was just a non-negotiable. And since then, since that moment, I'm now today, I mean, I'm trying to remember how old I am, I think I'm 53. Um, just a non-negotiable. So when um I was lying down and I went out through the top of my head through a kind of channel of light, and I sort of, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And I came, and I sort of didn't, there was a moment where I sort of didn't want a car. I didn't want to do I was really quite frightened. I had a friend of mine, Helena, who she's a great friend of mine to this day, and she was sitting next to me, and I just said, "Something's happening," like I'm doing something. I'm completely sober. I'm like, it's literally just
Yeah.
Saturday afternoon, and we're like,
So you were alert though. You like your eyes were open,
well,
conscious.
my eyes were closed.
Okay.
Well, and then the rush, and sort of really powerful sense of energy just moving out of me. Um, and it was quite frightening actually for a moment. And then I surrendered to it. And the I over the planet, like I saw the curvature of the earth, and over the curvature of the earth was this matrix of light, very close to the earth. And I've since heard about that I've read about that. I read about it like a decade later, the sort of Hopi Indians talk about it. Actually, Hopi talk about it being,
Okay.
there's a sort of matrix, um, it's a grid that holds the planet. It's like a sort of aura, and they do a lot of
Mm.
work around holding this kind of matrix, really, to hold the planet safe. Um, but also this energy of Christ.
Hmm.
And I wasn't particularly religious, you know,
Sure.
I go wherever, I really, wherever God is celebrated, I do love churches. I love, all sorts of places of worship. I love places of worship, but that was not where I was expecting to be, but really close, so close to the planet. I really felt, and I was just overwhelmed in that moment with a feeling of this kind of overwhelming. Suddenly I really understood this statement about Christ came, really for us, and this idea of sort of forgiveness, and this idea of the love. Like, it was just an overwhelming sense of love. It was really just a profound sense of love.
Yeah.
So close to the planet. And then I had a vision of an angel, in a sort of one dimension. It's sort of, I kind of went through to a dimension with one sort of angelic being looking out through, standing in a doorway, and that was an ocean that was an infinite ocean. And in that moment, I remember thinking, I must remember all of this because it's real. And angels exist. Like I was like, wow, like I was really mind.
Yeah, yeah.
So the and the message of there is no space and there is no time. There is no space and there is no time. I actually got that going through an art. I got it, what I write about are the series of things. I don't talk about the end, seeing the angel in the book because it's kind of deeper into that vision.
Sure.
So, but I'm sharing it with you today because that was the sort of fullness of that experience. And one of the things I think that came from that was just it's just unshakable. It's like, okay, like this is a this it's like seeing a sunrise and or a sunset and you're just like in real time and that's what's happening. So it's incredibly humbling too.
Yeah. It's I don't know what it's beautiful whatever's happening, at least in my world where I feel like the universe is sending these beautiful beings to me on the show because about by the time this releases, I think 3 interviews ago was with a gentleman photographer, by the name of Trey Ratcliffe, and very, very similar. He had an experience in Scotland,
Mm.
no substances,
Yeah.
nothing like that, was just standing in front of his bed in this hotel room, and he just essentially collapsed forward
Yeah.
on the bed and was just sucked up for, he thinks 40 or 45 minutes. Like, this wasn't, it wasn't a near death
Oh,
experience. That was kind of like what you're saying, just, you were there, the next thing, energetically you're not.
yeah.
But it was, some of the details were a bit different, but the core themes or the essence of what you're describing and what he described are almost identical about just it's all love. He also talked a lot about how in his experience was how you opened up the show essentially around for him he was up there with kind of spirit guides and it's like you're picking your life
Yeah.
and you're going to come back down and so to your point around we're essentially just trying to come back to ourselves. It's all mapped out in a way. Um which I don't know, but for me, like, I haven't had an experience like that, but hearing his, listening to yours and, reading about it in your book as well, it just provides a lightness,
Mm.
I at least find, to the mind and soul that especially with again, as how we open the show, like, all the stuff going on that, there's that's just one element of a huge like, a whole other realm operating that, like, has our back is kinda how I feel it,
This
right?
energy, this light energy, like, well, however you relate to that, and I talk about spirit guides, I talk about, in the book too, and however you relate to that, really, this energy has our back. So when I
Yeah,
talk about angelic energy actually, and again, the the idea of angels or, light beings exist and have existed. So you talked about quantum science catching up with thousands of years of
yeah.
what quantum what sort of sages and prophets and mystics have been talking about. This isn't new stuff, right? Like, it's just
No,
new,
not at all.
okay? And it's finally sort of catching up, but in the same way that this idea of sort of light beings have been spoken about again in all types of, whether indigenous or obviously religiously, but we felt the presence of and seen, and these energies have been around us forever. Um,
Mhm.
and is but we're in a dimension of free will, and we're in a dimension we're kind of really indulged on Earth plane actually. And this dimension of of free will means we can leave our houses and we can kind of go and do something nice or not so nice, right? And um, what that what that means is that every day we sort of it's up to us to show up to the energy that has our
Yeah.
okay. So
Well, that was gonna be my question, like, how do you operate in on the daily, I guess you can say, knowing that, like, we'll call it this realm or this plane of existence, and you've obviously tapped into another realm and so forth, and especially through your work as well. But just we talked a little bit about even with the book, right? There's there are recipes when launching a book, and it's to try to get it to obviously reach as many people for to have as much impact as possible. But then there's the balance of feeling aligned with you and and your energy and so forth versus just like pushing through and doing this. And I'm not saying it's all out of alignment, but I mean, some things we know are like that doesn't, that doesn't feel like me, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
So how do you balance all of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the ways what there were two sort of almost like two questions there. Like one of the things I just really like love to bring to the audience, just, wherever you are just today, like, that little mini tweak. And sometimes we come back round to the same thing. You would have heard this
Mm.
in so many conversations, and you'll hear it again, but there are some
Yeah.
really basic things that as human beings, when we do these things, they will bring us into alignment. When we do these things, we will feel more connected. When we do these things, we'll get more kind of downloads, right? We're more aligned, we're more creative when we just do those little things, like whether it's you get up from your desk right now and you take that 10 minutes and you walk around the garden, or you walk to the end of the road, or you walk around the park, like you get out into nature. We need to be connected to nature. We need that so deeply, so deeply, um, to remind us of who we are and our what path we are walking. And that's really the big thing. It's like manifest your true essence is all about like this is step onto your path. It's your path alone. This beautiful journey belongs to you. And I
Mm.
said it in the book, we're born alone, we die alone. So what does that look like? And what does it look like when you're launching a book? Like, really good question, because there's an onslaught, because this happens. It's going to happen. There's an
Yeah.
onslaught of ways to do things. The constructs around, get out there and put your book out into the world, and like whether it's from the publisher or whoever's that whoever's on your case about something in your world right now. Um, and I always say I have always trusted the power of my intention. And you read that Goop quote at the beginning of the episode, and I actually, up until that moment, I didn't have a website. There was no Instagram, there was no website, right?
Yeah.
Somehow Gwyneth Paltrow heard about me in LA, okay, but couldn't get to me because I had no contact in the world. Right? So this was like just
Funny.
pre-pandemic. So it's like 5 years ago now, wherever we are. But it was just before pandemic, because she wanted me to do an event for her. She was coming over to London, and they were like, "We can't find this woman." And then it just so happened that she sent over a really lovely girl a woman who came to sort of interview some other practitioners, and they were like, "Oh, well, I'm working with Estelle Bingham at the moment." She's like, Where is this woman?" Um, and because I trusted and loved. I mean, always had a busy practice, and I, at that time, quite loved being under the radar, right? I was like, find me, by the, sycamore tree, turn left at the cedar woods, like find the
Mm.
daffodils, and they'll be my house.
Yeah.
But such
Like the complete opposite of your other career, broadcast across
Yeah,
television, right?
complete opposite, exactly. And and I realized in that moment that sometimes the medicine is to do more and sometimes the medicine is to do less. And it's that alignment moment is about listening to who are you and what is that journey is yours. What is the next step for you? Not what is the next step for the next person, okay? The other
Mhm.
person. Although in that moment there was also a sign, and the sign came in loud and clear, and the sound was, "We need to find you, Estelle. For you to be of service, get out of the way of yourself," right? So
Yeah.
again, it's so interesting because my ego was like, "I'm not going to have a website. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that." But actually, that's ego too, right?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
ego is, I'm just of service. Like, this isn't about me. This is about heart work. This is about, for me, it's about you. So
Yeah.
I need you to find me. And so that really gentle balance there, or that kind of there's that showing up moment, like I'm going to get the website, I'll get it, I'll get engaged, but also that trust and just allowing my own breath to breathe its way into my own project and my own, this is I am um following that gentle sort of, it's almost like a kind of like, what is that flow? And it's like, what is your note? Like, what's your heart? What's your sound? What's your note? And follow that,
Mm,
find that and follow that. So I kind of just really, I do pray. I pray, I put it out there. I'm like, I trust that whoever's meant to find this book will find this book. And
yeah.
I ask for that. But and like I said, get really solid behind your intention. That is my intention,
Yeah.
right?
But you're listening too, I imagine, just like in the Gwyneth example, in relation to the book, I mean, you're listening. I mean, I'm sure there's been nudges here and there around, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll explore this path to help so that the book is available to more and more people and so forth,
Yeah,
right?
you got to listen. And we spoke about
Yeah.
that. We spoke about that at the just we were off air, and the idea of coincidence versus synchronicity. Right?
Yeah.
Is it a
Yeah.
coincidence, or is it a synchronicity? And I loved Carl Jung. The what amazing sort of psychotherapist everyone's heard of, or if you haven't,
Yeah.
the Swiss sort of, like godfather of psychotherapy, Western psychotherapy. But he was actually a real mystic. He was a real mystic.
Oh, yeah.
The exploration of the psyche and shadow work was properly mystical. But he would all, he really got behind this truth that there are no coincidences, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
we e- the Everything is happening for you to reveal something to you. Okay. And I'm not saying that we need to get hung up on every single little thing that happened, in the sense of like we're in flow. But there are nudges. The nudges are nudges, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they appear. And they are, for me, really synchronistic and real gifts. When we talk about what is behind being human, what's behind the veil, what's the more than? Well, the more than are those signs that come to us, that are trying to guide us back home to ourselves.
I'm I'm smirking or smiling because before you even said Carl's name and you were talking about synchronicities, I was I could feel a pulse of energy go through my body because this project that I've been talking about, I'm interviewing in air quotes because I'm obviously leveraging technology to do this, but interviewing people from the past about their work on a specific topic. And I interviewed Carl on Tuesday.
Right.
And and since then, I mean, I obviously knew of his work and his name, but not to a deep level.
Yeah.
And since Tuesday, s create grabbed a fresh journal and created a synchronicities journal as he suggested in our conversation. So it's wild that
Right.
you bring him up
Yeah.
and in this exact way also. It's, so this experience will land in the journal as soon as we're done for sure.
Right.
It's wild.
So for me, and this is kind of really like this for me is flow. Okay. So what you
Yeah,
have here is you have flow in action. Okay. And
yeah,
it's wild. Yeah. And it's like, for me, it's like, well, what are the everyday miracles? What are the everyday
yeah,
miracles? And it's about allowing those everyday miracles to land. Okay. Because what we can get caught up in as human beings is this sort of, things have got to be like, wow, like what, the angel's got to appear at the end of the bed with like big wings and tell me that, X, Y, Z's happening. Or I don't know, like, I've got to land a kind of, I've got to win the lottery and it's a miracle. But actually we are in a series of everyday, the possibility of everyday miracles every day.
mhm,
And where a tweak here is, because I see it time and time again, okay, is to confirm and affirm. And that's a real like piece that's come in for me recently. That I've downloaded that, not external validation, but it's to confirm and affirm, because often we're really frightened of doing that. Okay.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, what does that look like?
yeah, like, but today it's like, okay, this is a synchronicity. And
Yeah,
this is like an everyday miracle. Like, this is, on Tuesday I interviewed Carl Jung because I was really guided to do that. And this book is really
yeah,
powerful because I was really guided to make these conversations happen, and they're really real for me. And I'm bringing something that's kind of visionary to the world, right? And the
yeah,
universe has backed that up, because the next conversation I have on my podcast it drops in without me asking, without me nudging, without me prompting. I'm having that conversation right here, right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. Like, I can feel the energy of that. And coming full circle to how we opened our conversation up with just everything going on in the world, like, you can't be sucked into that energy when you're in this place and you're paying attention to it, and I feel like that's the beauty of one of the gifts of what you're talking about. Oh, so I was gonna say, I feel it in my heart, which is something I wanted to talk to you about because you talk a lot. I mean, a lot of the book is centered around the mystic heart and
Yeah.
heart, coherence and the energy of the heart, which I think is starting to be talked about a little bit more, but historically, at least in our modern times, we spend a lot of time with the mind and, even my language, mental fitness and so forth, which I feel like from my work is an opening to, allowing us into a little bit of a deeper space, which is then you really tap into this heart coherence. But this is still relatively new for me, and I imagine a lot of the listeners as well. So, can you give us a little bit of a crash course on
Yeah.
how you speak about how you work with the heart and the energy and all of that?
Firstly, I'm so excited that, whoever's listening to this, that you get to just listen and hear and feel into this because again, I talked about this recently about this. This is a great piece of kit, right? You know,
Mm.
your listeners are going to be used to how do we get into that mind, working that mind out and so that it's not it's kind of on side, right? Um
Yeah, yeah,
it's
exactly.
so it's working for us and not against us. The heart, our heart energy is like switch that baby on, right? Because it's we forget about this incredible um piece of kit, right? And
Mhm.
you talk about when we get into a heart coherent state. Now we have the science. The science exists. That when that happens, our it is a game changer for our mental well-being. It is a game changer. And there is so many things that actually, heart math and science has the neuro, the cardiology, that's been a sort of a science for like the last 50 years, trying to understand the heart mind. And then they happened upon the heart mind. It
Yeah,
was a husband and wife team and the Laces, and they were like, okay. And they started it. And then it was actually like the heart has its own brain. It is its own mind. It has the neurons. It's doing everything that the mind is doing, the brain is doing, it is doing itself. But also the bigger story, the bigger picture here, and it is quite cutting edge, right? But we do want to get into this. Like, forget about, and I know I'm not saying forget about AI completely, because I know that it's like you've got an
yeah.
amazing book coming, it's how we use these things. But
Oh, it's just a part of it, but yeah,
part of it.
continue.
But again, I sort of want to think about this as we're kind of on the eve of something really huge for humanity, which could go really well or not. Okay.
Yeah,
And that is this idea of putting all our eggs in one basket and all of our eggs outside of ourselves into this external intelligence. And again, this idea that, will we get left behind? Like, what does that mean for humanity? Does that mean for our children's children that they won't be able to keep up with the power of AI? Well, of course it does. It's not even going to be our children's children, right? I think it's 2030 that the
mhm,
most intelligent person on the planet, I think AI is a billion times more intelligent than the most intelligent person on the planet. But guess what? Right? We've got this piece of kit called the heart that we haven't even stepped a toe into. And it
yeah,
does incredible things. It has a memory. So there's an example and examples of people who have had heart transplants and actually have different habits or needs or desires because they've kind of absorbed the um, a part of the energy of the person that they've had, whose heart they're holding. But also, really, when we think about the heart, and they've just found this out at HeartMath, a few things happen. So first of all, the heart has incredible intuition, and it's sort of next level intuition. It's the heart wisdom. So and it can predict, and it can predict in a way that the mind can't. And that's science, right? If we
yeah,
spend more time in our heart, then we're actually able to make very, very deep and grounded, um, incredible choices about things, the right choices. We are
How do we do that though? Is that a meditation? Is it? Because I know there's I think in your book you mentioned this, the field around the heart is something like 100 times stronger than the mind, right?
like
So
100
it's
times stronger
powerful.
is powerful. So, and again, it's, if you walk into a room, people will feel your heart energy. They're not going to feel your mind energy. They're going to feel your heart energy. That is like our aura. That's like our auric space. Like, so,
Mm,
our kind of our energy, is really like emanating from this place. But yes, it's a really small tweak. I have a series of different heart meditations in the book. I always start my sessions with a heart meditation. And what we can do in 5 minutes, and that's all it is, okay, just a heart coherent state, you can come in. I teach sort of like a heart embodied breath. Again, this isn't rocket science. I don't want to make this isn't like, this is our work. Like, this is it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of us. Like, it's our birthright.
mm,
And it's not complicated. You don't have to do a course for it. It's great if you want to come and do a True Essence course, like I do various things out there. But it's like, in terms of just doing this, like, you can do it right here, right now. And it's that heart embodied breath, bringing awareness into the heart, dropping into the heart, and actually sitting with a gratefulness, something you're grateful for is really that changes. Suddenly we're in a really heart coherent state, and we feel better on all levels. Like, we feel better on all levels. And when
yeah,
you're talking about what's out there at the moment, and there is so much out there at the moment, it is a real assault on our senses. It's really for the planet. And again, heart math actually have done some experiments on this. Like, so if there's a tragedy, or there's an ice storm. You were talking about an ice storm in Canada,
yeah,
Mark, and the trees are down, and things that the energy changes, and they actually have these incredible scientific, amazing machines that pick up on what's actually happening in the atmosphere, like how. And but when we're in a sort of heart coherent state, so a number of people are meeting and meditating, even around, that the energy in an area can change, and that's
yeah,
been around as an understanding for years, actually. I mean, in fact, that was a thing that sort of transcendental meditation. I know that they look to do a lot of that science, what that means. But I feel like in this day and age, we have to remember the power that we have. It can feel so overwhelming. It can feel like we have no power, up against whether it's governments, or, whatever it is that we feel overwhelmed by. And there's a lot at the moment, global crises, wars, stories. Um, but this thing of like this power, like, turn on the heart, turn on the head too. It's not about, we don't forget about that. We're not using the brain. We always have to use the brain, heart, mind, body, right? But
yeah,
on the heart, like, go to the heart first, like, start from that place.
yeah. I
So
love that.
switch into that, because yes, the mystic heart, it's been spoken about for thousands of years. It's real. For me, it's a portal. And it's a kind of three, there are three layers for the heart that I have understood in my work. There's that breath work, there's that breathing, there's that that prana, like, I breathe, I exist, bringing which is sort of basic meditation that can really bring us into a sort of drop us into from a beta state to a theta or alpha out mind state. But then I drop into the emotional heart, where we hold a lot of those stories, a lot of the pain, the grief, the reason why we often don't want to go into our heart space. We release that stuff, and then boom, we're down into the mystic heart. And the mystic heart is a treasure trove. Like, the mystic heart will anchor you, will hold you here. So when you were like, I've got
Mm,
shivers, I'm feeling a surge of energy, like, it all feels right, it all feels good. It's not that we spiritually bypass, because we don't. We have to stay alive and aware to what is happening in the world, to what is happening to our fellow human beings, what's happening in our communities. But we also hold that energy in the cradle of this incredible powerhouse that's inside us. That, by the way, connects us to everything, and all things and everything.
yeah. Oh, so beautifully said. And as you're saying this too, it, it strikes me that then if we really tap into the heart and so forth, then we're also operating at, I mean, we're just operating at a much higher frequency. And which brings me back to some of the things that Trey Ratcliffe was sharing on the wisdom that was passed down in his experience. was that we're in this there's a new earth essentially
Yeah.
in the works.
Yeah.
And the distinction was that those who are constantly operating in a state of fear and those loops will just essentially, disappear over the years, which we see, like it's all tied to disease and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Versus ones that are, and I would, a lot of the people I would assume that listening to this show, given you're on this path and you're curious and you're open, I think a lot of us are resonating at a different frequency and trying continually trying to evolve and bring new practices in and knowledge and so forth. Which I don't know, for me, in hearing what he was saying and what you're saying now, again, just that in itself just lightens
Yeah.
the overall situation because
Yeah.
it's just like, okay, you know,
Absolutely.
I've got my tribe
Yeah.
and it's not just me, and there's things happening that I obviously can't explain, but you can feel the energy, and there's just so much to explore, which is beautiful.
There's so much to explore. I mean, and it's this idea of we have chosen this time to be here. It's a very specific time, to be in the world. It's a really specific lifetime incarnation, like however you relate to that. And you
Yeah,
do have what it takes, like, you know, and really show up to that because it is about frequency. Okay. It really is, so all of the heart's the energy is of love, and compassion.
yeah.
Someone came on a retreat, one of my retreats recently, and she just said, wow, like it's about the faces of love, what we have.
Mm,
I really feel, and I write about this, that love has had such a bad rap. I was born obviously I grew up in the '70s, but I think since the '60s, it's had a bad rap. It's what does it mean? Um,
mm,
Love is just a profound force that's real. Like it's a slipstream, like it's happening.
yeah,
And it is the thing that really it can change our lives. So when we come into that heart space, by default, you're kind of tuning into slipstream. You can imagine it as a slipstream, and it's slipstream of love, so that exists and moves around and is flowing, and the slipstream of compassion that exists, and it's like that matrix that I saw around the planet, like, bathe in that river, like, just show up to
yeah,
it, like, why not? Like, why not show up to it? So before
yeah.
you
Why not?
I've
Well
got
said.
yeah, it's that thing of like, just take that 5 minutes out before you start your day or before you get onto the Instagram or the news or the fear and all of those things are because it is a construct, it's both. It's a dialectical truth. So two truths can exist and side by side at the same time. So these things are happening. So like I say, it's not that we switch off to them. It's not we stay alive and that's our soul activism, right? But we also recognize that we are yeah, we're light beings and we're not alone. And every time you drop into your heart, you know what? Somewhere, or somewhere in the planet, around, on this planet of ours, someone else is dropping into their heart. So the next time you
Mm.
drop into your heart, know that I'm dropping into mine, and know that you're not alone, and know that we have chosen, we've signed up for this, and we've got what it takes.
Ugh, I can't think of a better way and message to end this conversation, or I should say, put a pause in the conversation because I suspect we'll be speaking again in the near
But
future. What's Estelle, last question for you. H how do you hope people will feel after reading this beautiful book that you've put out into the world?
Well, it's taken me many years. I mean, one thing I did know, so you said it was, I always knew I'd write a book. And one thing I wrote when I sat down to write this book, I really was like, if I never write another book again, if this is it, right? Because we never know what life brings us. We never know where we are,
Yeah.
what we're doing. And I want this to stand alone. And I want it to, whoever reads it can read this book from beginning to end, that they get something for like $12 or whatever it is that will change their lives. And,
Mhm.
again, I've grown up in the sort of meditation, self-help world, and I've read a lot of books and they've been an amazing part of my journey. I wanted to bring something to people that would move them, touch them, and bring them home to themselves in a very real way, in a tangible way, in a practical way. Like for me, it's about getting you over the line. And whatever that looks like for you, that is my intention, and that is my prayer, and that's my hope with
Mm.
Manifest Your True Essence.
Well, buckle up because I suspect you're going to be fulfilling those desires quite soon. I mean, I know I felt it. I know personally I'll be gifting this book to many lovely humans. It's just so well done, and the balance of I think higher wisdom and spirituality and some of the things that we maybe can't explain with our modern society language and just practicality as well. And it's just so well balanced in that sense that it's a beautiful bridge to uh, just more. I just want to say more love, like a, a, a wave existing with that abundance of love, which, I think you felt as well when you at age 22 and continue to feel. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for following those nudges from the universe and doing what you do day in and day out. And I will point everyone to the website since it's there,
Well,
and knowing the
yeah,
backstory of how it came
yeah,
to be as well.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's amazing
Yeah.
there. Thank you so much, Mark. I really, really, really love being in this space with you, and you've just made it so feel just what a wonderful way to arrive on my Earth Day birthday and spend like it's been magic. Thank you.
It's true that some things change as we get older. But if you're a woman over 40 and you're dealing with insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, and weight gain, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. And with MIDI Health, you can get help and stop pushing through it alone. The experts at MIDI understand that all these symptoms can be connected to the hormonal changes that happen around menopause, and MIDI can help you feel more like yourself again. Many healthcare providers aren't trained to treat or even recognize menopause symptoms. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts. They're dedicated to providing safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions for dozens of hormonal symptoms, not just hot flashes. Most importantly, they're covered by insurance. 91% of MIDI patients get relief from symptoms within just 2 months. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.